In recent years, video game studios have been judged more for their practices across the industry as a whole, rather than how good their flagship series is. However, according to ancient scrolls dating way back to the olden days, known only as the 80s and 90s, it's said that every studio once instead possessed a champion to defend their honor and attract the eyes of younglings, whose parents would be forced into buying them whatever game the champion showed up in. Or something. A hero, a symbol, a mascot, if you will. These champions included such prominent figures as Spiky Blue Pricklemouse, Plumberbad, Female Robit, Green Plumberman, Exclamation Pussy, and Bomb 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 Man. Many of these examples have, for better or worse, stood the test of time and remain memorable today, and may even continue to do so for decades to come before capitalism crumbles around itself. But even then, we'll probably end up worshipping them as the old gods and sacrificing goats to them.
Yoshi demands blood.
But what of the mascots who did fall by the wayside, who weren't bright, shiny, or cool enough to survive against the blue blur and the red-hatted jumping man in terms of memorability? Well, I'll tell you all about them right now in this list. I'm Peter from Triple Jump, and here are 10 forgotten video game mascots. Number 10, Sly Cooper, Sony. We start off with one of this list's slightly more well-known characters, admittedly, just to get him out of the way. But damn, the undue lack of love that Sly Cooper has received over the years definitely qualifies him for this list, even if he's only somewhat forgotten, as it were. A raccoon master thief, Sly Cooper appeared in Sony's quadrilogy of 3D platform games from 2002 to 2013, followed by his faithful entourage Bentley the Turtle and Murray the Hippo, and pursued by his on-again, off-again romantic partner Carmelita Fox. Sly has done everything from avenging his parents' deaths to breaking curses, fighting monsters, and travelling through time. Not doing the thieving trash panda stereotype any favours, Sly is a born and raised criminal, with such a love for shiny treasure and over-the-top traversal that I'm pretty sure he was born and raised in one of the dumpsters outside Nathan Drake's house. Now, as we all know, violent video games definitely encourage violent behaviour, am I right?
No, I'm not.
So likewise, if Sly became popular again, he'd probably be blamed for a wave of child pickpockets, the likes of which we've not seen since Fagin and Artful Dodger ruled the streets. But if it at least managed to reintroduce the word swag as something you write on potato sacks when you're trying to unsubtly burgle a joint, rather than, the new generation's alternative word for cool, then I'd consider it a fair price to pay. Bring back Sly. Number 9, Gex, Crystal Dynamics. Spyro the Dragon had to overcome more than one scaly-skinned rival in his rise to best reptilian mascot of the 90s. Now, Croc was cute, no doubt, but perhaps the best contender was Gex the Gecko. Coming about around the same time as other popular animal mascot platformers such as Crash, Banjo, and Conker, Gex was considerably less cuddly. His rather long and slightly convoluted backstory chronicles him as becoming a telly addict after the sudden and tragic death of his father in a NASA-related rocket explosion, and subsequently sofa surfing for a while before learning that his late Uncle Charlie had left him $20 billion in his will, with which he bought the largest TV in the world. As you do. However, after all of that, the evil overlord Rez pulled him through the telly into the media dimension and sought to, funnily enough, make him the mascot for his world domination. The games played pretty well, with an interesting wall climbing ability which really came into its own in Gex 3D, but the waters were slightly muddied when it came to the franchise's target audience. With his first title released in 1995 and the last coming in 1999, Gex straddled the middle ground between family platformer and young adult subversive game, constantly leaning casually on the fourth wall like the swag guy that he is. However, there was arguably too much wit to be properly understood by children, too few wink-nudge jokes for it to properly appeal to adults, and a reliance on pop culture references that have aged about as well in 25 years as all of our content will do in 25 years. Insert obscure UK children's TV show clip here. Man, I can't wait to see what the audience think of this in 2045. Number 8, Toro Inoue, the Sony cat. Sony. While many of the characters in this list come from the late 90s era of so-called mascot platformers, this entry instead originates from the most popular and congratulated game genre of all time. Chatterbots. Yeah, it's not, that was sarcasm. A chibi version of a Japanese bobtail, Toro the Sony cat is the angel to Tom the Talking Cat's devil, although he's only properly appeared in games within Japan itself. With an unnecessarily detailed character bio, Toro was apparently born on May the 6th, likes Chutoros, mantis shrimp and natto rolls, and unlike every other cat in history, dislikes being put in cardboard boxes. Even though he is mainly considered a Japanese mascot, Toro has remained close to Sony's worldwide brand. But if Mario ever decides to hang up his jumping boots and actually do his job and go in and block some goddamn U-bends for once, then Japan as a nation will always have this cute cat friend to fall back on. Meow. Number 7. Rob, Nintendo. Rob, that's R-O-B in all caps, is the only member of this forgotten bunch that is physically real, which is just as well, because if Gex was an actual bloke, you know he'd be indiscriminately breaking through one of your 4 living room walls and shouting out some sort of dated Star Trek reference to you on a nightly basis. Rob, or Robotic Operating Buddy if you want to get serious about this, was an accessory released in 1985 by Nintendo for the NES, who immediately stole our hearts, when in fact he was more of a Trojan horse that fooled people into getting the NES system in the first place. Though he may have a charming Wall-E-like face, as a character, his personality is a little thin on the ground. Now that's probably because he's really a literal CPU that doubled as a second player AI in all 2 of the games that ended up being released for him, those being Gyromite and Stack Up. And yet, while Rob was never a very popular accessory, being discontinued 5 years later in 1990, the character has quietly remained a part of the Nintendo brand to this day, with cameos in games like Mario Kart and the Smash Bros. Series, as a thank for his help in bringing Nintendo of America back from the brink after the video games industry crash in 1983. Nonetheless, make no mistake, he is very much forgotten. None of the Smash Bros. Players have any idea who this is or where he's come from. Rob, you might be a bit crap, but we salute you for your service. Number 6, Alex Kidd, Sega. Back in the 1980s, Sega's mascot had been another forgotten character who we're not going to talk about today, a sentient rocket ship with legs called Opa Opa from the Fantasy Zone series. However, in their search for a mascot that could rival the plumber, or, you know, even just had a face, they came across a small bipedal creature that promised to match him. No, not that one. A child called Alex Kidd. Looking like a combination of Merry Brandybuck and Goku, Alex was apparently based on the Monkey King Sun Wukong, a figure from Chinese mythology, which I guess explains his hairy appearance and massive ears. Apparently, he's only 14 years old, whilst also being hundreds of years old at the same time. You know, like Bart Simpson. As an orphan who lives in a remote mountain cave on an alien planet, Alex trained himself in the art of shattering boulders through sheer willpower alone. This might sound awesome and like something out of one of your Japanese animes, but for some reason, the way it translated into gameplay simply involved him slowly making his way through a level punching blocks, and so it didn't really rival the novelty of an Italian plumber in moon boots. Needless to say, Alex Kidd was mostly forgotten. Number 5, Cool Spot, Virgin Games. Alongside other food and drink branded video games, including Chester Cheetah, Pepsi Man, and the M&M titles,
other corn-based snacks, fizzy drinks, and shell-covered chocolates are available.
1993's Cool Spot featured the highly relatable, groundbreakingly designed, 2-dimensional red spot with legs, arms, and sunglasses, who doubled up as the North American mascot for 7-Up. Developed and published by Virgin Games, this sentient Tiddlywink was basically a walking, talking product placement, as obnoxious as he was obvious. Buy our merch. However, for Cool Spot's European release, all mentions of the 7-Up brand were removed. This was because the European branch had a very different mascot for the same drink, Frido Dido. My tea's gone cold and wondering why. And 7-Up didn't want their European marketing scheme to be scuppered by something that looked like those red stickers your teacher would put on your homework in junior school. Not that this guy looked any better. In fact, it's probably just as well that they've both been forgotten. Number 4, Wild Woody, Sega. You know in the Art Attack intro when all the giant stationery jumps out of the pencil case and starts flailing around? Well, Wild Woody is what happens when you take that concept and merge it with the personality of the Pepperami mascot, resulting in a crazed, lead-filled wooden maniac. Wild Woody was unleashed onto an unsuspecting world in 1995 by Sega, or according to his own universe, by a totem pole head who decided that his other totem pole head brothers creating fantasy worlds inside paintings and comic books equated to an end-of-the-world emergency that only Woody could fix. No, sorry, that was one sentence of lore and I'm already lost. Armed with an eraser, a newfound self-awareness, and such an unfortunate name that it doesn't even matter which end is the pointy one, Woody proceeded to utterly crash and burn, fading into obscurity after his first and only outing. However, he has remained somewhere at the back of the cultural zeitgeist, resurrected in lists like these, and having his legacy kept alive simply through the power of his terrible cursed name. But in the wake of other games with similar drawing mechanics like Akami, it isn't beyond the realm of possibility that he could somehow return to us in a more interactive drawing-based game, and we must stop this from happening by any means necessary. Number 3, Awesome Possum, Tengen. The state of the environment is a growing concern, despite all of the warnings that Tim Curry-voiced animated movies and video games gave us about evil corporations polluting the atmosphere. One of those Curry voices was that of Awesome Possum, a name that fails to rhyme in most English-speaking accents, just as much as it failed to single-handedly fix the climate crisis. In a plot that sounds suspiciously familiar, we follow this side-scrolling creature that spins in a ball as it battles an evil megalomaniacal scientist who wants to continue polluting the planet for his own evil means. Literally all we're missing here is bright primary-coloured fur and a hard-boiled egg. And thanks to creator Tengen going defunct in 1994, Awesome Possum's legacy will now always remain as a Sonic the Hedgehog ripoff with half the fun and none of the decent controls. It is of course commendable that, unlike Sonic, Awesome Possum chooses to collect cans and bottles in an effort to make recycling hip and cool, swag, though I'd really rather do without the constant shouts of "I'm awesome!" and "That was awesome!" and "Oh boy, that's awesome!" Okay, yes, we understand, thank you. Number 2, Parappa the Rapper. My name's Peter Austin and I'm here to say, Parappa is a game that Sony made. Well, technically they only published it, but Nano Onsha, the developer, has too many syllables to fit. Have I reached peak white yet? Okay, good. In this game's 3D world, Parappa the Rapper is a two-dimensional bipedal rapping dog for some reason, who tears his way through a series of rap battles with his numerous different teachers, so that he can learn to be, well, proper street and that. Drawn in a style that is most forgivingly described as unique and reminiscent of the graffiti art that is synonymous with the rap and grime genres, and most unforgivingly described as totally radical and swag, Parappa the Rapper is considered by many to be the first true rhythm game. The franchise boasts a sequel, a spin-off, numerous ports, and 2 separate anime series in 2001 and 2016, and the character himself has appeared as a fighter in PlayStation All-Stars. In fact, by some metrics, it could be argued that Parappa isn't quite forgotten, but certainly when you've got Crash, Spyro, and even Sir Daniel Fortescue continuing to who live at large to this day, I think it's fair to say that this poor rapping good boy has at least faded into an unfair level of relative obscurity. And number 1, Ristar. Or Ristar, as a lot of people apparently pronounce it. Yes, I have it on good authority that this is something the world is divided over, even down to the small splinter group who for a couple of decades have been saying Ristar. Kind of apt nowadays. We'll stick with Ristar for now, I think. And oh man, what a pretty boy. Okay, admittedly, his in-game sprite looks absolutely flipping livid, but the game as a whole is definitely a good-looking one, with color palettes and animations that still hold up today, 25 years on from its Sega Mega Drive debut. Indeed, this fact makes it all the more surprising to learn that this boy was essentially a rejected concept for another Sega hit, and was picked up out of the proverbial bin just before the proverbial bin lorry came to crush him into a proverbial bin cube. It's true, if you watched our frankly excellent list on 10 things you didn't know about Sonic the Hedgehog, then you'll be aware that in the earliest stages of the Blue Prickle Boy's development, various other character concepts were being thrown around before a Speedy Hedgehog was settled on. One such idea was a rabbit who could reach out and grab stuff with his extendable ears. 4 years later, enter Ristar. Admittedly, he now looks nothing at all like a rabbit, but those stretchy ears have now become arms, and this just in, they're super fun to play around with. With a surprising number of traversal moves, these rubber limbs allow Ristar to make quick work of his side-scrolling world, and are even integral to his primary attack. It's a genuine shame that this little piece of mascot gold ended up falling by the wayside, and with an aggregate review score of almost 90%, it's also pretty inexplicable. F in the comments for Ristar. And that's our list, but are there any other mascots, good or bad, that have been lost to the sands of time? Let us know in the comments below. You can follow myself and Triple Jump on Twitter here, and if you want to support the things you enjoy, then check out the rewards on our Patreon. Finally, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I've been Peter from Triple Jump, and thanks for watching.